everyone. Welcome back as we continue to celebrate Black History Month, honoring the contributions and sacrifices made by our Black brothers and sisters. Our next guests have a collaboration screening of the award winning African Jazz Art Society and Studios, pioneers of the Black is Beautiful movement, a documentary highlighting the preservation of jazz in the Bronx and birthing Black is Beautiful, a celebration of Blackness from hair to arts and culture. And here to share more is the Bronx County Historical Society Director, Dr. Stephen Payne, and AJASS, pioneer of the Black is Beautiful movement, Director Louise Dente. Hello and welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and congratulations on all the accolades received thus far. It's beautiful to know that this work is being presented here in the Bronx. I'd like to first begin with you, Dr. Stephen Payne, since you are the director of the Bronx County Historical Society and what that role entails.
Sure. I began in this role in July of 2022, so relatively new. Before that, I was the librarian and archivist here. And it was really through my work, especially my archival work, recording oral histories for the Bronx African American History Project, which is a community-based oral history project that's been going on since 2002. It was through that work that I met a number of individuals with ties to AJASS, including Bob Gums, who was a founding member. And we'll say more about Bob in a little bit. But yeah, my role as director, I am really responsible for all aspects of daily operation of the society across education. We have two historic house museums and, various kinds of public programming that we do, including this screening.
Well, congratulations on your newfound role, and thank you for making sure that our history is preserved in this manner, and just making sure that our audience as well as our community is abreast of what's here in our own backyard. And so, leading into Louise Dente and your mention of having a lot of association with certain members that are part of HAS, let's talk a little bit about Cultural Caravan TV series and Cultural Caravan production, so that people are familiar with your work and how you collaborated with Dr. Stephen Payne.
Well, I just first of all want to thank you for inviting us. We're very pleased. So really quick, Cultural Caravan is a not-for-profit cultural, educational, media service organization, which we, established since 2006. We've been broadcasting programming for the last close to over 15 years. We started off actually, in several of the community active community channel stations. We had the pleasure of being with BronxNet for a period. And then we decided that we wanted to ensure that everyone, including people upstate and people in Westchester and all over the New York tri-state area, had a chance to see it. So in 2012, we began working with New York City media and NYC media. So it's been a really great experience, really sharing African American culture in the diaspora. And we say the diaspora, we mean not just African people in America, South America, the Caribbean, the Latino culture, which is also connected to African American culture. So so we've had all sorts, all different peoples on there, and it's been a very interesting experience. So we're very proud of that experience.
That's wonderful, and thank you for breaking it down for us as such. And of course, including the Latino community as well, because there is no divide, and that's what we're here to talk about, right? Because one of the things that I noticed, although we just got a bite size of the film, is like one of the topics is hair, and I found that to be a very interesting fact because we're still dealing with that.
Absolutely. Yes. It's a very interesting thing. So let me, if I may, I'm the filmmaker and I've been, I've actually was first introduced to one of the members of AJASS goodness, about 20 years ago. His name was Chris Asmodisi Hall, who was a phenomenal artist and cartoonist. And he mentioned AJASS at the time, and I actually did a broadcast on his life, not knowing that later, years later, I would be doing this project. But what encouraged me to do the project was through a woman that was part of a organization that the AJASS members formed, which is the Grandassa Models. These were a group of African American women who were basically known for wearing their natural hair, Afrocentric clothing. And there's one particular one of the founding members was a woman by the name of, we call her Black Rose. And she was the one that they was celebrating their 57th anniversary in 2018. And at the time we spoke about it, and something just told me, look, Louise, you know, all these elders, all these people are up in age 70 plus. You need to do something to preserve this history. So that's how I decided in 2018 that I needed to do this, and really had the opportunity to work with, I call him a giant now. He's now an ancestor, Bob Guns. But let me answer your question, and I'm sorry I had to
It's okay.
lay
No,
that
it's
down.
good. We need to know all of this. I'm fine with the way you answered
Let
it.
me just, yeah. So in terms of hair, you know, hair is a very interesting thing. As you know, there was some legislation that's still going around the country in terms of ensuring the people of African ancestry have the freedom to wear our hair wherever, however we choose to wear it, whether braided, whether you know, in locks, or in you know, in kinky style, whatever. But the freedom is so important. And unfortunately, there have been people who've been fired from their jobs, people who've been harassed because of what they do. So there's another film that I produced, but it was, you know, that's another story that talks directly about that. But anyway, how this particular film intersects is that the Grandassa Models, which was a formation by the AJASS men, interesting enough, they understood the importance of really validating the traditional beauty of women of African ancestry. And it's so particularly kinky hair was really not it was very put down. It was something that, because of racism, even people within the African American community didn't have a good self-esteem about that.
Right.
So they felt it was necessary to let people know, regardless, that our hair is a very important part of our culture, and that's why the legislation, which I must say proudly enough,
Right.
New York State was one of the first. You know, California was the first, but New York State was the first to enact legislation to protect the rights of women and men and people in our community to wear their hair whatever, however they wish to wear it. So we have to give our state a recognition for being on the vanguard of that.
Right.
So, you know, that's something that's key
Yeah, the
there.
Crown Act, the Crown Act. That's the Crown Act. Right, right,
Absolutely.
right. So, thank you. That was really very, very detailed, and I appreciate it too. No, because it's important that we learn, and that's the educator in you. and so Dr. Payne, she keeps mentioning. Louise, that is, keeps mentioning the AJASS members. And so I'm just curious if you could share with me, obviously we're going to talk about Bob Gums, but just how many members there are, what that entailed, and how it was even founded.
Sure, sure. So, you know, it's an organization that has a long and rich history, which is why I'm grateful that there's a documentary to access that history now. But, you know, it really just started among a pretty small group of teenagers and young adults, most of whom lived in the Bronx in the 1950s, and really enjoyed jazz, and also wanted to promote the African cultural roots of jazz, and to promote the kind of Bronx jazz scene, which was, you know, really, although it doesn't get as much recognition still to this day. I mean, it was just as vibrant, if not more so, than some of the other, you know, better known jazz scenes around New York. You know, you have musicians like Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie, you know, you can go down the list, who would come to Bronx clubs, especially Club 845, which was located on Prospect Avenue. They'd often come after hours, you know, maybe they'd finish a set at one of the larger clubs in Manhattan, and they come up to the Bronx and perform at these smaller kind of neighborhood venues. And people like Bob Gums, Alombe Brath, others who were founding members of AJASS were exposed to this really vibrant jazz culture in the Bronx and wanted to promote it. But from there, of course, the organization went in so many different directions. I mean, I feel like in a way that's somewhat parallel to the rise of hip hop, it never was just about music. It was about the whole culture, music, graphic design, art, modeling, of course, fashion, all of it. And AJASS really was at the forefront of a lot of these movements. And really to give props to the Bronx. I mean, just like with hip hop, the Bronx was at the forefront of a lot of these cultural movements in the 50s and 60s.
And so, thank you for that. And so, just having the experience of, I want to say, transcribing that, and then converting it into a story, a film style story told, right? Obviously, you've been at this since 2018. There's a screening going on at the New York Public Library. You've already won awards, Louise. But what was that process like for you?
Mhm. Well, I looked at it more of a labor of love. I had to actually invest my own resources. I didn't have a sponsor for this project. It was really motivated by my own excitement and of the urgency that this needed to be done. So that was number one. So I didn't. That was not whatever it needed. It was done. I had to take money up. So and then I was motivated by the great, and I call him ancestor now. Bob Gums, who was one of the founding members. Luckily, he was in great shape, great health, and vitality, and he was just so excited about this project because he knew he'd been living the history. He knew the part of that founding, the inspiration. So he was really the guiding person, as you see pictured there, of this ship. And he was a phenomenal graphic artist himself. As you see one of his works, Black is Beautiful, he was very proud of that. Those pictures, very proud of that history that he shared. Very modest man, but he also worked with Dr. Mark Nason of the Bronx Historical Society, the Bronx Heritage. He worked on a book that they collaborate on Bronx history. So having Bob is kind of helping to steer the ship along with several others. The beauty of this project, there are so many. I had no problem finding people to support and corroborate the theme of this. Many people distinguish when communicator Bob Law from Night Talk and WBAI. I had a distinguished journalist and professor, basically A. Peter Bailey. I had to bring all the way in from, actually, I had to go out to Washington to interview him. And then several others, activists, even members of the illustrious, what do you call Grandessa models, who I had the pleasure of interviewing. A number of people. So it was really collecting this history, making sure that everything was accurate, and from the mouths of those who lived it. I understand how important it's that from the mouths, just like the oral history. It was really like an oral history project. So
That's
from the mouths of Bob Gums, along with all the others. So that's really what motivated me.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And we're so grateful to you for bringing it to our viewers. And I hope you guys are getting this. This is about us telling our own stories and preserving it as well. And once again, we had Louise Dente and Dr. Stephen Payne, excuse me, from the Bronx County Historical Society, and we are discussing AJASS, pioneer of the Black is Beautiful movement, and this particular film is going to be screening, and there's going to be panel discussions on Saturday, February 18th between 3 and 7 p.m., and that's taking place at the New York Public Library, the Bronx Library Center, which is located at 310 Kingsbridge Road in the Bronx. And if you're interested in more information, please visit BronxHistoricalSociety.org, and or you can visit ccptv.org. That was so exciting. I hope it interests you guys. Stay tuned. There's more open when we return.